Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Hey Emma, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just hanging out at home.
Cool. Before we get started, if you could let everybody know who you are, what you do, if you have any likes or dislikes in everyday life, any future aspirations, something interesting you've done recently, anything and everything you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so I'm Emma. I currently go to the University of Central Oklahoma, where I double major in forensics and sociology. And then I have like a year left there, so I'm almost done, thankfully. Um, yeah, and then outside of that, I do work at an esports arena called the Co-op. So that has been a lot of fun. It's definitely my favorite job I've had so far. Um, and then outside of that, I built my own PC, so that's exciting. I'm really happy with that.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Um, Speaking about the PC that you built, what made you want to do it?
So, gaming on a laptop is not the best. The graphics get a little bit weird sometimes. So, it was definitely worth the investment, I suppose, to transition to um, a build so then I can get better graphics quality and then play more games because just some games will not run on a laptop. It'll just crash the whole thing.
Gotcha. So it's sort of like that distinguishing factor of like a graphics card or um, the other stuff that sort of goes into it. Just out of curiosity, how much different is like a build PC in comparison to like an Alienware or one of those gaming laptops that are made? Is there much of a difference between those?
There can be. It really just depends. So the Alienware is, I know that's been really popular recently. The only problem with those is the price of the parts versus the actual price of it. You can
Hmm.
get the same exact parts for so much cheaper than their pre-built price. Like, yeah, it looks super cool and it saves you the pain of having to put it together, but it really depends on, do you want to save more money and just build it yourself, or would you rather just pay for the convenience of having it put together?
Fair enough. Yeah, it's I guess it's just that um, age-old decision between time and money and convenience. So that's fair. That's fair. You mentioned something interesting about the co-op being probably the best job that you've had in comparison to some of the other jobs you had before. If you don't mind sharing, what were some jobs that you had before, and what was it that you didn't like about them? And this is many sub questions within the same question. And what's something you like about working at the co-op?
Yeah, so my job before this, I did not enjoy at all. I decided instead of working on campus, I was going to get a job off campus, and I just happened to get a job at Spirit Halloween. Worst manager I've ever had. It was not fun. But before that, I was doing IT sort of for the university. Um, but I started that right before the pandemic started. So when it started, then I was just getting all these calls like, oh, my Zoom isn't working, and how do I fix this? And it was just really repetitive. And I just got really tired of it. So yeah, that did not last.
Gotcha. But what is it that stands out about the co-op that makes you like that job?
It's definitely not the pay, because I am making less than I've made before. It, I knew that was gonna happen. It's just part of being a student worker on campus. I guess the pay isn't always the best. Um, it was mainly though, I wanted an entry into that sort of field because I am trying to get more into hosting tournaments and things. And then that's just a great way to gain experience. And then also, like, just getting to be paid for sitting there and playing video games if it's not busy, like, that is just amazing. So that's been really fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Based off of what you just said, I think it's really interesting that you chose to take the job because of the experience rather than letting it go because of the money. Do you think that we as college students, I mean, I'm not a college student anymore, but generally speaking, do you think college students tend to struggle with that a lot more, of that choosing between liking the job that you have versus working a job that gets you the most money?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big struggle because I myself have kind of wrestled with thoughts like over the years of, oh, I really like this, but if I do that, I'm going to be broke the rest of my life. So I feel like a lot of people then just look for things that would make them more money because I had a roommate who she started off as an art major because she really liked art. But being an artist, you don't make a whole lot of money. So she then switched completely to biology, um, where she doesn't exactly enjoy biology, but she knows she's going to get paid really well for doing that. So it really depends on person to person. Like myself, I feel like I would rather be happy in a job than get paid more. But I know some people, they just want the money, frankly, because I mean, we need money.
Right. I mean, they have different priorities and maybe they have more need for the money at that point in time. So I totally understand that. You can't necessarily fault them for taking that decision. Um, but yeah, you sort of mentioned, or not, you did mention that you were a forensic science and sociology major. So what made you want to pick that as a choice of study?
So forensics is always something I knew I wanted to do. I got into it in the way they tell you exactly do not get into it. I started by watching just the crime shows and everything, which I feel like a lot of people did. Um, which obviously that life is nothing like the shows or anything. That's just what kind of got me into the field in the first place, sort of like interested in it. And then I went down these YouTube rabbit holes of watching them like uncover these skeletons and stuff, and then looking at those. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Um, and so I just kind of wound up at UCO because it's really good for that. And then as for sociology, I did not want to declare a second major for so long because I was really scared of being one of those people that just changed their major a bunch of times. So I waited till my second year, like at the end of the first semester, and then I declared sociology because I wanted to do some other things, but like in looking at that, then I look at the major list and everything, and I go, oh, I need to take 6 law classes. I really don't want to do that. Or this job is like almost impossible to get. That's probably not the smartest idea. So I went with something that I know I'll have a job, um, and it's something I'm interested in. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now.
Cool, cool. I mean, sociology in itself is very interesting in a topic by itself. So is that something that you enjoy, like taking some of the classes?
Yeah, surprisingly, I really enjoy the classes. Like even when I'm sitting there in a 3-hour lecture, most people get really bored and I'm sitting there going, wow, like I really enjoy this topic. Um, so like some of the classes are a little bit weird. Like I'm taking a class right now called human sexuality, and the first day of class, all we did for an hour and a half was talk about how women fake orgasm. And I was like, I never thought this would be a class topic, yet it somehow was.
Interesting, interesting. Um, what are some topics like that that sort of wowed you about um, sociology? And secondly, did that sort of help you feel better about the choice that you made of picking sociology over something else?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps you understand people and their choices a lot better. Because I mean, psychology is something I enjoy, but that's just focusing on the one person. Versus sociology, you're looking at how like the society around the person and their environment affects them and the choices they make, and that not only like helps you understand yourself a little bit better, but also just the people around you. And just I really enjoyed a lot of my intro classes, partly due to the professors I had, but also just the topics. So that definitely helped me feel really secure and know like, okay, hey, I really enjoy this. So I was pretty content with the major.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Because a lot of the times I think there can be moments where we sort of resent the choice that we made because of it being difficult and excuse me, so on. But before we continue further on, I just wanted you to sort of differentiate psychology from sociology in your own, like from your own opinion, because I think they can get quite clouded as looking like the same thing. But yeah, how would you sort of differentiate the two?
So for me, when career wise, I want to work in prisons and everything and help with rehabilitation. And if somebody needs like a lawyer, help them find a lawyer. If they need a therapist, help them find a therapist. Um, and in the psychology point of view, you're really just focusing in on that person and on their brain and looking like, is there anything wrong in their brain or anything? And you're really only focusing on them versus like in sociology, you not only look at just what's going on in their brain, but you look at what was their family life like. Like, did they have both parents there? Were they adopted? You look at a whole bunch of different things, and then you also look at where they went to school. Because, like, yes, psychology is very important, but for me, I feel like the people around you and just the environment you're in also really um, play a role in how people grow up, and then the decisions they make down the line. So yeah, and instead of just psychology, the one person, it's the person and their environment and society.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I don't think, I'm sure people do think about, but maybe they don't think about it enough to where they don't realize the impact that their surroundings might have on them, be it on the decisions that they choose to make or the people that they choose to be around, and so on. So, like, I think learning to sort of break down all of that is very sort of fascinating to me. Um, because, I mean, at the end of the day, the better headspace we can be in, the better it is for us all, you know? So, um, yeah, that's great that you've sort of um, found what interests you in that sense. So that's awesome. But sort of getting into the main topic conversation, full disclosure, for those of you probably don't know, or I think nobody knows, maybe. I don't know. I'm asking myself these questions as I'm this question as I'm saying it out loud. But anyway, Emma and I met each other actually last year, not last year, excuse me, 2020 fall during one of the Bronco Buddies events that they had. And I remember at that point in time, through the event, that Emma was not in the best of headspaces, but now she's found herself to be in a better headspace. And kudos to you for that, by the way. Um, and I saw that through one of the Instagram posts that she had put up. And yeah, here we are to talk about it a little more deeply. So at that point in time, like in that semester, what was the general feeling that you woke up with?
The general feeling I would wake up with mainly was just dread. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go to class. So even when the university went back to you could go in person or stay online, I just chose to Zoom because I didn't have the energy to get out of bed, um, and go outside and just face people. Just I was not in a great space, and yeah, it just did not make for a good morning.
Gotcha. And I mean, I just need to sort of, I guess, mention this for those of you who don't know. Bronco Buddies was an international student, international office program, excuse me, that at UCO, where they would pair a domestic student with an international student so that they both got to learn about different cultures and so on. But yeah, to go back into our topic of conversation, did you notice sort of ebbs and flows in that phase where there were some days where you were like, okay, I'm feeling a little better, but then there were others where you just felt like you took one step ahead the previous day, but then took 5 steps back?
Yeah, that definitely is something that confused me a lot, because like Monday or something, like I would wake up and it would be a terrible day. But then Tuesday I would wake up and I would decide, hey, I'm going to go to class in person today because it's great weather outside or something. And then Wednesday it would be back terrible, and it's very confusing, like just for the person themselves, because you're going, okay, like, am I happy? Am I not happy? Like, what is going on? I don't understand.
Hmm. So for you personally, what do you think brought you to that point where you felt this way?
Um, I mean, I've always kind of struggled with depression and anxiety since I was probably 14. Um, but transitioning, like the first semester of college, I enjoyed it. Um, it was different. I was stressed, but it wasn't bad because I fell into this routine and everything. And it was the semester right before COVID hit. So I could go and do all these fun things. So I didn't feel as bad. But then when COVID hit, that routine like completely went away. And I had almost no routine because life was so unpredictable at that point. Um, so without a routine, I kind of felt like I didn't really have a purpose anymore. I was just kind of waking up and aimlessly doing tasks throughout the day and then going back to bed and then just waking up and doing it all over again. Um, and that definitely made me kind of go down a slope. So,
Hmm. You mentioned routines there. Do you think that it was a combination of routines and the lack of the sort of physical connection that you would have with people that had a huge impact in sort of dropping you down that slope?
yeah, I think that definitely played a huge role because, like, in getting better and everything. And I don't really like to say getting better, though, at the same time, because that implies there was something wrong, which, yes, there was, but at the same time, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself because it can happen to anybody. So, yeah, in the process of getting better, um, I really had to sit there and lock down like what my routine is, like whether that's sitting there and writing down, I wake up at 8:30, I get up, I get dressed. Like I had to do that so I could fall back into a routine, because routines for me especially, they really help. um because like in the morning you sit there and you get ready for your day, or you wind down at night. And then also just being around people, even when I feel like being around people isn't beneficial, usually I'm completely wrong and it's very beneficial. Um, so it's just kind of, yeah, without those, I just feel like there's not really a purpose. So,
Mm. Do you feel like the pandemic in itself, along with just the sort of social media culture that we live in, had a huge role to play in maybe the way that a lot of people felt? Because I've heard about instances where a lot of people have felt the way that you did, felt like there was no purpose. There was a sense of impending doom where you didn't know what was going to happen the next day, and so on. So do you feel like the pandemic alone played a huge role along with maybe social media? Or do you feel like, I hate to put it this way, but do you feel like this was maybe something that was on the horizon for us as a society, in the sense of the sort of hit that a lot of people's mental health condition has taken?
I feel like it's a combination of the two, because they've always talked about like on the news of how like we were due for another big pandemic because it's been a long time. So I feel like that's part of that. And then also just the pandemic, from everybody I've talked to, nobody really had anything good come out of it. I mean, some people they managed to have like a great time, like because some people they got engaged or something during the year, or they had this really great job opportunity come up. So for some people, they didn't have many problems, but I feel like it also depends on where you're at in life. So like us as college students, without that sort, because like growing up, you sit there and you go, oh, when I get to college, I get to do all these things. But then you get to college and then a pandemic hits, so you don't get to experience that. So that's kind of upsetting. And then also at the same time, you're like, well, I'm spending all this money and I have to sit in a dorm room all day and Zoom. So you feel like you're just sitting there kind of wasting your time and stuff. So like a lot of people dropped out, or a lot of people had mental health issues just because they felt like they had no purpose. It really depended on each person.
Right, totally. And I mean, it's wild to sort of imagine how things have changed, like from the time before the pandemic to where we are now, as things stand. But you said something interesting about some people, or a lot of people, sort of struggling with the pandemic, and others finding or something good happening to them. There's many questions that are coming out of my head, so I need to find one that I can ask first. Um, do you think that, well, okay, let me ask this first, I guess. Do you think that because the pandemic was so dreadful for a lot of people, do you think that we as people, generally speaking, struggle to hear someone say, oh, the pandemic, while it might have been bad for some people, it was great for me. This happened, that it just made my life better, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that as a society, we probably struggle with that thought when people say, oh, there was more good than bad that came out of the pandemic? For me personally, as a human being, like when someone says that, how do you feel our approach towards that is?
Um, I think it's definitely something hard to hear because you want to be happy for that person. Like, great, I'm really glad that you didn't have a super hard time and you had some good times during the pandemic and everything. But at the same time, it's really hard to not wish that was you instead or something, or understand, well, or just understand that everybody's going to have a different experience and not everybody's going to be like as miserable as you if you were really miserable or something. And it definitely, like, it makes you feel bad kind of as a person when you feel yourself kind of wondering, well, like, why did they have a good year or something. Because I don't feel like anybody really wants to judge somebody like for having a good year. Like, you want everyone to have a good year, but in such a crappy situation, I feel like it was a lot harder to do that.
Mm. Yeah, I get that, because at the end of the day, we are the kind of species that sort of unfortunately live in a world where we sort of look at other people, and we feel a certain way when somebody is happy, and we're not as happy as they are, and all that sort of stuff. So in that, like, speaking of that, do you think that as human beings in general, we sometimes struggle to maybe find the silver lining in the bad things? And if so, like, what is it that makes it hard for someone to find that silver lining, in your opinion?
I feel like, yeah, we definitely do get stuck and find it hard to find that silver lining. And then also there's the case of sometimes that silver lining is there. Like, you can just like walk through the door or something and things can change, but sometimes you get so used to feeling a certain way that you fear the change of getting better or something. Um, so I feel like a lot of people just they're scared of the change, or they're scared of the process because maybe they don't want to like go to therapy or something if they need to go to therapy, or they don't want to like cut out those people from their life or something. Um, so I feel like it's hard to do that, And then also, it can be hard to find that silver lining sometimes, um, even if you know it's there or something, or even if you don't know it's there, you just sit there and you like hope it is. Um, but at the same time, if you're so completely miserable, sometimes it's hard to find one.
Totally. I get that. Um, did you feel stuck in that phase that you were in?
I definitely felt stuck. I feel like I was kind of in a situation where I could see the silver lining. I could see it was like right next to me or something. And but because of the current like situation and everything, I felt more comfortable just being miserable for whatever reason. Like I didn't enjoy being miserable at all, but at the same time, I felt like there was something wrong with moving forward and trying to do things differently than just staying where I was.
Hmm. Was there a certain thought that made you feel like there'd be more misery if you took that path in comparison to the sort of misery that you were already in?
Yeah, I feel like it's just the fear of it kind of letting you down or some yeah. Of if I took this step or something or I changed things up a little bit, it would still fail and then I would feel worse because it fell apart. Um, so I think it was definitely just that fear of it could make things worse if it falls apart.
Hmm. Did you have any sort of expectations at that point in time of like, in the sense that might be negative or positive, in the sense that did you expect yourself to be stuck in that phase forever? Or did you sort of have expectations of like, okay, I think I can come out of this? Um, but then I'm sort of scared of it not working out. So what was your sort of mindset from that perspective in terms of
It,
expectations?
yeah, it was kind of a bit of both in a way because I felt like I could get out of this, but only if the pandemic ends or something. Um, so yes, it will end at some point, but I don't think anybody really knew how long it was going to go on. Um, so it was, and like because of how much it did for me personally, I think it was easier for me just to sit there and blame it entirely on the pandemic and go like, okay, when this is over, things will get better. But until then, it's not going to.
Mm, mm. Did you sort of feel that you could take control back in that sense, to where you could maybe feel better and not necessarily wait for the pandemic to end? The reason I asked that is because, I mean, the pandemic is still sort of existent. It's still a part of society, but you've found your way out. So in that sense, was it like that dynamic of control from your own perspective, to where you felt I need to grab the reins and sort of change this? Or what was your outlook like in terms of being able to take that one extra step to change the way you felt?
Um, Largely, it was a combination of things. Like, I felt really tired of just being stuck in that like bubble, I guess, where I wasn't enjoying anything. And then also, like, I would have like my mom calling me or something and going like, "Oh, you need to perk up or you need to do this." And just the people around me, I think also encouraged me to take that step because by myself, I may be somewhat content to an extent of being the way that I am, but having the people around you going like, "Oh, I know you're really struggling with this, like you need to change." I feel like that kind of pushes you a little bit more.
Mm, definitely. Um, was there sort of like that, I guess breaking point is not the right word, but was there that inflection point where you were like, that is it, I'm done, I'm not going to feel this way anymore, I'm going to try to do anything in my power to change that? Or was it just something that you felt sort of built on gradually, to where you were like, all right, here I am, I guess I'm feeling better now? What was that like?
Yeah, I definitely have this point where I felt like I had hit rock bottom. Um, it took a lot longer than it probably should have. It was a combination of things over the course of like 2 or 3 months. But like I lost my best friend of 7 years, and then my boyfriend dumped me, and then I had family members in and out of the hospital, and like that for me just that just dropped everything completely to the bottom. And when you're at the bottom, like it's like there's really nowhere else to go other than up. So yeah, I think that was kind of just a wake up point for me.
Because I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know how much of this you remember, but I remember something along the lines of the event that we mentioned about earlier, where we met. It was like a discussion based event where everybody was sort of having a conversation about like the positives and the negatives. And I think to some question, I forget what the question was, but to some question, your answer was life. I don't know if you remember this, but it sort of felt like, to me at least at that point, that, you know, for you, it was hard to see that there was light at the end of the tunnel. But now that you've seen that there is light ahead of the tunnel, how do you feel generally?
Right now I feel a lot better. There's definitely days where I feel like I slip back sort of some ways. But that's just going to happen. That's just a part of moving forward. It's just not really letting those days to get to you and continuing to move forward. um, I feel like that really helped me. And then just learning to like let go of things, like let go of the things I can't control. Like I can't control the pandemic. I just have to find a way to move forward and live with this condition and everything. And like I can't control like who comes and goes in life. You just have to like kind of take that and deal with it and just make what you can out of the situation.
Right, totally, totally. um I had a question in my mind, but then it disappeared. um okay, now it's back. Great. Okay. You mentioned something about the ebbs and flows of the way you feel. Was it that realization of the fact that those ebbs and flows exist that made you feel maybe a little better, to realizing that, okay, I can feel a little down some days, but then I can also feel a lot better some other days?
Yeah, I think definitely recognizing that those are going to be there for everybody. Um, I think that definitely helps. Like obviously they're going to be different for everybody. Like some people they just may like be really tired or something one day and they're not normally very tired. But for me like one day I may wake up and I may just not be in the best headspace. I may be just kind of depressed, and just learning to be kind to myself in that situation and go like, okay, like it's okay that I feel like this, but just understand it'll pass and just keep moving forward with my day and don't just sit there and lay in bed all day. Um, and yeah, just understanding like, oh, the next day it could be like this, but just be optimistic that it could be better.
Mm. Since you brought up the topic of optimism, this might be a bit of a tangent, but I'm just curious how you look at it. You think that optimism is something that, what's the word I'm looking for? Is optimism also something that ebbs and flows, or do you think that a person can always be optimistic even if they're in a bad situation?
I feel like it's definitely something that ebbs and flows. Um, I try my best to be optimistic, but there's some days that I can't help just go like, I literally don't know how to be optimistic about the situation, um, and just kind of accept that. Um, I just feel like as long as I'm trying my best to be optimistic, then that's good. But if I can't, don't be upset with myself for anything and just kind of move forward.
Mm. Yeah, very true. I see where you're coming from in that sense. Uh, you also mentioned letting go, and you know, I remember reading this, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, on that post that I was referencing earlier about the fact that some people left your life, they were not in your life anymore. And you also brought that up about letting go. What did learning to let go teach you about the experience in general?
Honestly, just getting to the point of letting go was a long process because it's so hard to accept that fact sometimes. And then at the same time, I don't want to let go. Like, because I feel like at the same time, that's still the only way they're in my life is if I'm holding on to that situation. But at the same time, if it's detrimental to me, I know I have to let go. But I feel like once I got to that point of letting go, I realized holding on to that wasn't doing me any good. Um, because ultimately I can't control like who comes and goes, and I just need to accept it. Like I know it'll be a process to accept those things, but I have to in order to move on with my life and take care of myself.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I struggled with this concept of letting go as well, like a couple years back, um, where I get like it. There is weirdly a level of comfort in hanging on
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that things will work out. Um, but then after letting go, I realized that this was actually what I needed in comparison to hoping that things will work out, even though I hung on to maybe a person or maybe the feelings that I had for someone. So it's really interesting with like that dynamic of realization
Mm-hmm.
with the experiences that you have. Um, so like I guess in that sense, what did you learn about realization through this whole process? Like from the time that you felt low to the time to where you are today?
Um, I've just kind of learned like just keep kind of moving forward, and then just bizarrely, like even though it's hard to get to this point and everything, and like I had to let go of certain things, I feel so much better than I did like holding on to that and like holding on to that comfort of like what if it works out or something. So I feel like yeah, I think it was that.
Mm. No, I get what you're saying because it's, I think as a species, we're sort of built to seek comfort. And I say that because, it's like evolutionarily as human beings, it was all about survival and making sure that you had food to eat, a roof to stay under, um, clothes to wear, and all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. So, when that comfort is sort of, you throw a cat amongst the pigeons, it just makes it a lot harder for you to sort of digest that, I think. And at the same time, it also makes it a lot harder for you to realize that you might need to actually sort of seek some discomfort to be comfortable overall. Like, I don't know if that
Mhm.
made sense, but um, yeah, what's your take on that in terms of seeking discomfort and understanding that you're not always going to be happy if you're seeking some level of comfort?
Um, it's definitely very conflicting. Um, I'm trying to think of like different situations and stuff. Um, like for instance, somebody who's in like an abusive relationship, they're holding on to that comfort of, oh, like they say they love me or something, and like it's uncomfortable to leave and everything and learn to let go. Um, but at the same time, being okay with that and like moving past that point can definitely help.
Definitely, definitely. Um, to sort of tie a bow on all of this in terms of like the journey that you've been on, I know it's hard to sort of truncate all of this in like a very sort of short sentence or like a few sentences. But generally speaking, if you were to sort of tell somebody about your experience and how they can maybe find a way out, what would you tell them?
I don't just want to say it gets better because I feel like that's something everybody says. It's definitely a process. And then there are days like you feel like things aren't really better. Um, but ultimately, moving forward in the process of like healing and getting better, it's better for you in the long run because like I've learned to focus like more on what I want and like what I need versus other people. And yes, that's hard for me to understand sometimes, but I know ultimately like that's what's better for me. Um and you know, I'm not completely like 100% better. I feel like I still have a ways to go, but at the same time, I can look back and realize, okay, like okay, I've definitely come a ways. And I feel like this process of getting better is it's definitely more of like a lifelong thing for everybody because there's always going to be different things happening and you just kind of have to keep moving and just do the best you can.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. That process of getting better is it is a process. Um, and it's gonna take a while, but there is light ahead of it. There is
Mm-hmm.
light at the end of the tunnel. Um, this might feel like we're sort of going back into a bit of a negative space, but I'll try and bring it back. I'm just curious to get your take on this. Do you think we as human beings can ever be at 100% of feeling better at like any point in time, or do you think like we'll always be below that 100?
um I don't really like there may be like a split second of like pure joy or something like in the middle of a conversation of like somebody makes you laugh. I feel like at that moment you may be there, but it's always very brief. But in general, I don't think anybody's ever just going to be sitting at 100%. Um, I think it would also be kind of weird if somebody was, because then like the people around you are going to sit there and go like, "What is wrong with you? Like you're like bouncing off the walls, like you're so happy or something." So I feel like that then is going to kind of like bring you back down where you're sitting like at like 90 or something.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I do see your point in that sense, because again, like maybe like to reiterate, excuse me, what was mentioned earlier, it is that sort of ebbing and flowing process to where you're not always going to feel 100%, and that is okay. um it's not the end of the world. um what was there like certain things that you said to yourself to see that there was light at the end of the tunnel? I feel like I should find a different phrase for that, but anyway. Do you feel like you said some things to yourself that helped you get through that, like through the self-talk that you had with yourself within your head?
Yeah, definitely just for me personally, it was just kind of just put one foot like in front of the other, just keep moving forward, like even through the days like where I feel like completely miserable and I just want to lay in bed. Um, I know I have to keep moving forward, like even if I can't see the light ahead, like just knowing it's there and I just still have to take the steps day to day just to keep moving towards that.
Totally, totally. And I think that's something that, anybody who's listening and watching should sort of take away, is that it might be hard to see the silver lining in things, but as long as you're keeping some pace and like moving forward to as much as you possibly can, you know, things will look better in some sense. Um, things can be better in some sense. To sort of bring it back to why I guess people who are listening and watching probably won't see this part because of some technical issues we had earlier. But um, um, you mentioned that you were going to start streaming on Twitch in sometime in March. and you wanted to sort of be an avenue to like spread some positivity out there. So firstly, why did you choose Twitch as an avenue firstly? And why did you feel the need to spread that positivity?
So Twitch is just a platform I'm very familiar with. I have a lot of friends that stream on there, and then I've helped people with like their overlays or something on Twitch, or I've helped them with, yeah, just something on there in general. Um, and then also like YouTube to me, it's just kind of a scary thing because I feel like you're just posting a video like out into the void versus Twitch, you can kind of see like, okay, I have like one person watching, so like at least you can make a difference in that one person's life, which kind of leads into like the whole positivity thing. Um, Everyone is on Twitch for like a different reason. Like some people, they just want to be famous. Um, Other people, they may just really want to share like what they're interested in. And then I found there's a group of people that just they genuinely just want to make a difference in somebody's day. Um, Whether that's just making them like laugh for an hour or something, or just giving them like a small piece of advice that they can use. Um, I feel like things like that were very helpful for me in my process of healing, of just watching something like as mindless as Twitch, where I'm not focusing in on like what's going on in my head, but I'm just like enjoying the game or enjoying talking to the people in there. So I feel like that kind of is what pushed me to want to do Twitch specifically.
Gotcha. That's totally fair. And I do take your point about YouTube being like a void, because I've felt that through this journey of podcasting and stuff. But yeah, how do you think personally that gaming and just the act of sort of streaming through Twitch can spread positivity?
I mean, gaming itself is an outlet for a lot of people, especially like for me. So regardless of what happened in the day, like maybe I had a super stressful lecture, I know like I get to come back and I can play games for like 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, I don't have to worry about school or something. I can just sit there, I can enjoy the game, I can sit there and make progress in it. So I feel like I'm accomplishing something in a way. Um, so there's that. And then also just, I mean, streaming also just kind of helps to give me something to do. It helps give me some sort of like purpose, and also help with the scheduling thing of like, okay, I'm going to stream on like Mondays and Wednesdays and then the weekends or something. Um, I feel like that also, like adding into my schedule and just having like a set schedule for myself is very beneficial.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you're able to sort of find that as an avenue, because I think we all need an outlet in some sense. And into some respects, I mean, I guess like maybe this is just my own perspective, but I think that whenever somebody uses the word creativity, it's very much associated to like a certain type of art, but it's very much also an outlet for us as human beings to sort of maybe let go of certain things or feel a certain way. So, kudos to you for finding Twitch as an avenue to where you're now taking that step of wanting to start sometime in March. That's great. So, I mean, good on you for that. Just a couple more questions before we go into the latter stages of the podcast. Firstly, do you feel like your choice of majors in college, be it forensic science or sociology, can find some intertwined way with your interest and love for gaming?
I definitely feel like it can in a way, because there's like certain games that I'll play, like I'll be playing like a crime game and like something will happen and like I sit there and I get so excited. I'm like, aha, I know that it's incorrect. Um, and just that is kind of fun. And then also just using like different sociological like perspectives to sit there and apply to like the communities and things and go like, I understand like this is this way because of this. Um, it's just kind of a fun moment, I guess, to kind of connect what I'm learning with something I enjoy.
Right, right. Totally, totally. Because you said something earlier about wanting to work in like prisons where you can maybe help people feel better and things like that. Is this something that you thought about of like maybe possibly incorporating gaming in that perspective?
Um, I feel like that would help. Yeah, I feel like that would be great. I'm not entirely sure how possible it is, but at the same time, like I'm gonna be optimistic and be like, oh hey, like ultimately, like not everybody is going to enjoy gaming, but I know like there may be a few people in there that like find that as like a good outlet for stress or something.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's just a sort of idea, I guess, but it was just something that I was curious about when you mentioned that earlier about wanting to sort of help people in those situations. Because at the end of the day, like we sort of already said, um, it's nice to find an outlet to do things that make you happy and help you feel better if you had like a bad day or not feeling the best, be it physically or mentally. So that's definitely true in many different cases. um, to sort of um, what do I want to ask now? I feel like sometimes I have too many questions and sometimes I just go blank. um, I guess it's just a everyday thing with this, but anyway, where do I want to go with this?
It's the ebbing and flowing of thoughts.
Right, exactly, totally. It is the ebbing and flowing in thoughts. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Um, what? Okay, you've probably already answered this, and there is going to be a similar question that comes up later. But um, maybe I should just save that. You know what? Yeah, I'll just save it for the end. I'll just ask that towards the end. Let's not make it too repetitive. But yeah, we're gonna go in towards the word association game called Bish Bash Bosh. But before that, thank you so much for answering all of these questions. I really appreciate the depth with which you wanted to sort of talk about it, because as much as you're in a better spot now, I think sometimes it can be very hard to even just reminisce about those times and sort of think about it. So thank you, like genuinely, for wanting to come on here and talk about it. I really appreciate it. Um, but yeah, we're going to go on to the word association game called Bish Bash Bosh, where I will give you 5 different words, one at a time, and you have to respond to each word in 3 phrases or in 3 different words. All of these words are the same that I ask every guest, because I'm sort of curious to see how people respond to the same words, maybe differently or
Mhm.
similarly. So, does that make sense? Do you have any
Yeah.
questions before we get started? Okay, cool. So the first word for this, excuse me, for the segment of Bish Bash Bosh is differences.
Understanding. Um, Let me think here. Growth of knowledge and acceptance.
Hmm, awesome. The second word for this segment is nuance.
Can you explain kind of what that word means? I've heard that word. I'm so
Sure.
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's all good. It basically kind of means like that there is black and white, like it's or not that there is gray. Excuse me. Because a lot of the times we see things as binary and tend to forget that there's a lot of things behind it that might make it seem the way it is right now. And that there is a lot of gray that exists. There are some subtleties that maybe we don't notice, but then just because we don't notice them doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist. So, excuse me, that's what I would say nuance generally means. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Clarity, revelation, um, and then just openness.
Cool. I like the word. I mean, I like the choice of clarity, because I think a lot of the times with nuance, it can seem like it's very muddled, but at the same time, I think it can give you a clearer picture of things. So that's a great choice of word there. The third word is learning.
Life. It's ongoing. And then just it's enjoyable.
Cool. The fourth word is empathy. What are the things that sort of floating around your mind when I say that word?
Just a feeling of understanding. Just a connection with other people, and then comfort.
Beautiful. And the last word for this segment of Bish Bash Bosh is similarities.
Similarities. I don't want to say boring. I feel like it's the opposite of differences. And then it's exciting. And then also it helps with connection.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you so much for playing along on this segment of Bish Bash Bosh. Just a couple more questions before we wrap this up. The first one being, how do you relate to people?
So personally, I just kind of like to see how people are doing, frankly. I ask about classes and stuff and just kind of find that common ground of like, oh, maybe they're having like a really hard class or something, and just kind of encouraging them. And then I also, like, I used to be really bad about this. I used to like just hang around people like as similar to me as possible. But like especially through like Bronco buddies and stuff, like branching out and connecting with people that are completely like different from you, I feel like that's also really nice.
That's awesome. And for the last question, which is not really a question, but more of a request, I suppose. If you could leave all the listeners and watchers with a positive thought or a positive quote or something that just keeps you going every day that you'd like to share with people and let them know that they could sort of use it as an avenue to possibly change the way they feel at that particular moment.
Yeah, I feel like just do the best that you can. Whether like the best you can do for that day is literally just getting dressed or taking a shower, like good on you for doing that. Or whether it's writing an entire research paper or something, it's going to be different for each person, but just do whatever you can with however you're feeling. And yeah, just take that step to keep moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining me and sharing everything that you did. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I really appreciate you sort of being open about all of this and being open to talk to me about it. Because it's something that everybody can relate to. Everybody can relate to feeling like, there's nothing that can change. And now being able to sort of find that things can change and things can look better. So kudos to you for that once again, and thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And for those of you listening and watching as well, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Oh, before we go, actually, I forgot to ask you this. Is there a sort of handle that you'd like to share with people for them to follow you on Twitch?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's kind of gone back and forth. At the moment, it is Mint Minx. So
Okay.
Minkx. It's a weird spelling. But yeah, there's that. I have that on Instagram and then also Twitch.
Cool. I'll make sure to share those in the description as well. Sorry, that was a bit of a brain fart and it just sort of came back to me. So I apologize. But yeah, thank you so much once again, and make sure to follow Emma on those avenues as well. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys next week.